What's that?
No, no. I just had to step out for a quick meeting.
No problem. Okay, excellent. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and start. Don is back. The representative was with us, as you saw, off and on. He had to step out for a meeting. He's hoping to get back before we get going. A couple of things I just wanted to talk to you about and give you an update on. Probably the one I'm the most excited about and a little nervous, if you want to know the truth, is there was quite a bit of dialogue about Representative Smith's bill last time, which was known as HB 37, High School Diploma Options. I had given you in your packets a copy there from that dialogue and a little bit of pushing and maybe even motivation. The representative went back to his bill creators and writers and took that, because he really wants this to be a constituency bill, and changed it, withdrew that other bill, and has presented HB 133, which is known now as High School Course Options. And it is, as you'll see the language there, it is very similar, but rather than taking an approach of specific to additional high school diploma options, it is to talk about potentially course replacement. As Dr. Stone talked to us in the last meeting, you know, the answer isn't simply setting a standard of, for example, Algebra 2. As he showed, many of the careers needed are going to be those that involve Algebra 1 and geometry, or for example on the ACT. And I think to me the very dramatic was that those that get a 22 on the ACT, only 13% of them passed Algebra 1. I mean, those that passed Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, only 13% of those students got a 22 on the ACT. And even if they took trig, their potential of getting a 22 only went up to about 37%. So as he was saying, it's not necessarily saying, oh, the more courses you take, the more career ready you are. It is about providing those career choices, those pathways. I will tell you there's going to probably be competitive bills on this. And many of the ones that we're hearing coming on, and this has been a concern that I have, is they are again putting the cart before the horse. And that is, oh, here are the options that you, or career options that you will take. Whether they work in Miami, Citrus County, wherever, they are the ones, excuse me, I'll let the bell finish. They are mandating, again, what those are. A lot of what I'm seeing is it's repackaging, or I'm hearing it's repackaging of the 18 credit option, graduation option that we have now, which is really not creating and solving our problems. Because what those, and Ms. Gale or Dr. Connors or Ms. Denise can share with us, all we're really doing is removing languages, I believe, predominantly out of that. We still aren't addressing, you know, reading remediation courses, alternative testing options, replacement courses again. Some of what they're saying is, okay, we'll replace Algebra 2, but they're providing a certificational requirement that would be twice as hard as Algebra 2. That's not going to get us down the road of where we need. And that's why we've tried to say, let's take a step back, let's talk again to those on the ground, the educators, the career leaders, and say, let's study what course replacements we can do, and then come up with what the actual replacement courses are. In this case, what is coming out is to say, nope, here they are, live with it. And by the way, now we have answered the CTE argument, and that is pretty much what's happening. So I will tell you, as time goes on, you'll probably see me, at least even personally, get pretty on my soapbox about the fact that we need to have a real solution and not one that we just put down in legislation and say, there, we provided you one. Now continue. I believe this is a good first start. Now, the next piece of this that I believe is talking to a lot of you educators and career people in here to say, what types of courses, what types of things do we need to have the study and the things focus on? And that's where there's a conversation. We want to get Dr. Stone involved with that and say, so we're not duplicating some of this, but to pull from some of that so that we know. Yes, sir?
What we experienced today, I think, is absolutely wonderful, but it seems like we have two objectives here. What we witnessed today will take place in the future, which is fantastic, but we also have an immediate problem. And from my perspective, we need to solve the immediate problem. So I would think workforce connection, somebody knows what our immediate needs are.
And just for clarification, the immediate problem being specific.
What is it?
What do you see as the
I'm not with
immediate?
workforce connection. I mean, they're the ones that 400 people didn't come here because we didn't have qualified people to fill the job.
And our answer to that, and I'll let you go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead and I'll come in afterwards.
I think what you might be referring to is the fact that we've got close to 6,000 unemployed people in Citrus County and 600 open jobs that can't be filled.
Right. And of course, one of the things that we argue and that we've talked about is there's two parts to that. One of the parts, and if anybody read recently, I had two columns that was in the paper. One of the things that I talked about is that the state, through the required courses that we now have to offer, or the testing that we have to require, and then the results, and that being, for example, if they don't show proficiency in one area, we don't have the options of career options. When we went in today and you saw that whole work area with the welding area, all of those, one of the reasons that's empty, or much more empty than, for example, if you went through the rest of our rooms, is we've got a lot of those kids that are having to take remediation courses that are traditional courses. They are not practical courses. They're not learning it in a manual way, in the way they're going to need that. Because we've instead said that they must, and here's the thing again, they must now, the freshman class of this year, or next year, but it started with this year's as well, they have to pass Algebra 1, and they can't just pass it in the classroom. They have to pass it with a standardized test that's given 6 weeks before they finish class.
Do you think the graduation rate would increase if a kid's specific skill is what he was trained on, rather than...
I think without a doubt, because the data that shows this year, and here's the thing that I talked about in the column, this year's graduation rate was based on the fact that if you went and got your GED, you were a non-graduate. If you took 5 years, or let me say this, if you had to finish in the summer of your graduation year, you're a non-graduate. If you went to an adult vocational program at Miss Denise's school, you are a non-graduate. So the state changed the way we look and how we even measure those students. That's one of the first things. The next thing that they also did is, for example, because our schools, all of our schools this year were required to be graded, including our alternative schools. An alternative school, for example, is CRHS, which are students that have, and by the way, students that have a special diploma, and they don't finish in their 5th year. And we have a lot of students at CRHS that don't, because we take students there up to age 22, but they will, as they work through, those students are non-graduates after their 5th year.
Seems like an oxymoron. Seems like the system is trying to make it difficult to train our people. So our people are either going to have to say, screw you, I'm quitting school, I'll be a non-graduate, but I'll make more money than the guy with a master's.
And that's exactly what's happening. But here's the challenge. You want to go into the military today. Ms. Nobles, how hard does it get to get in the military if I have a GED?
That's kind of impossible.
can't go into the military with a GED. If you want to, which is why the story I talk about the Penn Foster option, and which is not now with Common Core, that's getting to be a harder and harder option for us to potentially have. This is why what we continue to talk about is this standard that all students must be college eligible in order to get a high school diploma is forcing these career paths that we had for years to be gone.
It's foolish.
And it is absolutely, and I don't think that you will get much argument from anyone in here. The challenge that we've had to have is that this has been based on a very specific group of individuals that have forced this. And now we are often, and why I have valued Representative Smith is because he has said, I don't care what aisle somebody's on, if we are going to do what's right for students and what's right for citrus students. You know, one of the things we talked about in this study is it shouldn't just be what's right for the entire state and say that's what's good for the entire state. Citrus County should have the autonomy to say, you know what, we have a lot of medical needs here. So we should be able to develop programs that do that. Other districts will have, you know, their own industries that they need to develop. And we want to absolutely do that. Ms. Denise will tell you, her hands get very tied as to what courses she can offer at her school, because if it doesn't fit a certain list, she's not going to be able to offer it and get funding for it.
Well, I think I'm kind of a student of what's going on, but I've never heard of that. Why don't they print stuff like that so we can be educated and somewhat educated as non-graduates?
Do they really want you to know?
I will say that our paper is better than almost most around the state at actually trying to share that. When I, kind of took contradiction to a recent editorial, the publisher was immediately, when I sent mine in, absolutely, Tom, this is good. Let's get this out there. Generally speaking, I think Mr. Bittner has the advantage or disadvantage, depending on his day, of having some of our highest order kids in the county. He is the coordinator of our International Baccalaureate program. Many of his students will go on to some of the most elite private schools, elite public schools, and Ivy League schools. And you will see this man tell you all day long, typically, should all kids go to college?
No, but will those kids come back to Citrus County?
No. And that's why this group in particular has been that we have got to create a vocational that assists Citrus County jobs. But I can tell you, I point to examples all the time. Miss Amy here, she is a graduate of Crystal River High. She went on to college at University of South Florida, banking, extremely successful in that, and is back here with her husband, who is also put back into our community. And I will tell you, Dr. Connors, another graduate from Crystal River, this community is filled with, especially in education, with people that have come back here and really want to live in Citrus County, because we do have such an amazing place with our young people. I love that my children get to come to live and go to school in Citrus County. It is one of the best opportunities that they've had. But you're right.
Can I share a quick story?
Absolutely.
This man was giving a speech at a graduation class at a teacher's college, and he told the teachers, he said, when you go out in the world, be very good to your A and B students, because they'll come back and be professors. And be very good to your C students, because they'll go out and be the blue-collar workers. Be extremely good to your D students, because they'll come back and build a $20 million library.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. And you are right. And what a lot of why we keep talking about is what you saw today are multiple pathways. What you have in this room are people from multiple pathways. And what has been the case is so many times we've been told, raise the bar, and that's the problem. And what we know in education is that's not the problem. And then they'll say, well, it's because you're not testing the right things. Well, we've learned that it's not necessarily just providing a test. It's of no use if we're not testing the skills that we need them to learn. And so we are constantly balancing that, and all of us, particularly in public education, our hands are tied by the legislators and the policies of the Department of Education. Yes, Andy?
But I would just like to say, FCAT is out of a lot of people's control, but I think what our school system and what we all saw today is an example of that, is although there are hurdles and there are things that we have to, I mean, that's something you have to live with. It's not going to go away. But in the interim, you're still preparing students for the real world. And I think today was a great illustration that teachers aren't just teaching to the FCAT. And you're doing so many other things here. And great job to you, Mr. McCoy, and your staff for doing all of these great things. Because the Health Academy wasn't teaching the FCAT today. And the Business Academy wasn't teaching the FCAT today. And all of these other groups are working so hard to prepare students for real lives. So, you know, although there are many things that we can be negative about and complain about and whine about, but they won't go away. Teachers are taking on a strong attitude to prepare the kids and do what's necessary to work around the systems that are in place.
And I appreciate that. I will tell you though, here's the worst side of it. FCAT is going away. FCAT, as many of us know, is being replaced by end of course exams. In this school, for example, or in all of our high schools, you're no longer just taking an FCAT writing, you're now taking a end of course exam, and no matter what the homework, no matter what the letter grades you get in Algebra 1, Geometry, and eventually Algebra 2, and Biology, thank you, sir. It is the end of course exam, that high stakes testing exam, that grade or that score is the only thing that matters to get a high school diploma in the state of Florida.
Who grades that?
Pearson. Now, you add to that, where's FCAT in the elementary school? FCAT is being replaced by the PARC, or what the consortium of PARC. This is the Common Core. But let me tell you some of the things. Some of these I'm pleased with, some of these should be worrisome to you also as ad valorem taxpayers. Ms. Tipton, who is the Deputy Chancellor for the Department of Education, she's basically the person that knows curriculum for the state of Florida. And talking to her about how can we prepare our elementary school students to take this new standardized test that they're going to take in 2 years. She said, if your kindergartners are not learning true typing, cut and paste, and manipulation of words, sentences, and letters, then it won't matter pretty much what you're teaching them in the classroom. It's not going to get onto the test. The PARC test for 3rd graders through 11th graders is completely typed, whether that's going to be in some type of tablet or desktop form. If they are taking their assessments prior to that, it's in manipulatives. So, and then we're not talking about, you know, we have students all day long that are comfortable with computers, turning them on, opening up a program. We're talking about cutting a sentence here, pasting it here, going back up, clicking on it, and rechanging the word in the sentence structure. That is the most critical issue. It's why I've been such a proponent of the iPad one-to-one, which means one device to one student pilot that we're doing at our middle schools. We're doing it right now at one of our middle schools in 7th grade, because this is what these students will have to do, that no matter what we teach them, if they cannot put that in, and I will tell you, being an SLD student, a learning disability student, what I type and what I think are not necessarily the same thing. Those students are going to have challenges. And here's an example, and this will be exciting to some of you that had math. Proof and concept is all come back. It is not necessarily that you know the answer, but you know how you got the answer that's important. Now, we'd all be saying, well, we've been trying to say that for years. There's some, especially some of the old school teaching, that's what was the idea. But now, even our 3rd graders, they have to type in how they got the answer and why they came up with that. Those are very complex skills. And that's what our teachers are under at this moment. And that is a state as well as a federal mandate.
Well, you have older teachers, you could have a problem.
Yeah, we are. We are.
Are you seeing a lot of, I'm sorry, are you seeing a lot of issues with maybe some of the older teachers who aren't very
Tech savvy?
Yeah,
It,
who are
it-
having to.
you know, it
teach.
depends, because there's some, I mean, I will tell you, my mom's 73 years old, and I mean, I send her stuff to edit all the time on Word. She uses Word, 2010. She Skypes, I mean, it depends on the individual, and it depends on what they're doing. So much is that for educators, and my wife is an educator here for the last 22 years in reading and language arts. It's tough because the rules have changed over and over. And so there is a reluctance to, well, yeah, that's what they tell me today, and is that what it's going to be? And here's a new element. Remember, their entire, especially new teachers, their pay grades, their pay, their increases and their employment is based on those student scores. And so that's a challenge that we're having as well. As we talk about replacement courses, how do we meet this requirement that the state has, that there must be measurability and it tied to that teacher? And if I'm a teacher in one subject area, I may, for example, last year, geometry, if I taught geometry, did I get graded in geometry? I got graded on reading as a teacher. Here's one that I'll tell you that this is my fun right now. This year, in your high school grades, Dr. Connors, what was your grade, what science grades got to get used to give you a science grade last year?
Can you believe that? They just, because there wasn't any science test, they just took points from all of the categories and multiplied by something, and that's what points.
They made a phantom science grade that was not based on any science courses. They took all non-science courses in the state, averaged them for your school, and that became your science school. And then my favorite, we have pushed that some of our kids, we want to give early options for higher math. And so we have in Citrus County, a large number of our students take Algebra 1 in 7th and 8th grade in middle school. Well, this year, the state said, the only math course for your entire school we will give you a grade on is Algebra 1. Oh, and by the way, none of your middle school students' scores that were banked can you use for your math score. So you can see a little bit of why we get, yes, sir.
I hear you, and it's appalling, and you just don't know how our legislatures or the federal government could mandate that. But at the same time, from a business perspective, Florida, not only Citrus County, but all of Florida, is known as a poor state to come and establish a business. They rather, Boeing just went to South Carolina, Caterpillar, they go elsewhere. They do not come here because one of the reasons, there's several, but one of the reasons is a poor educated workforce compared to other states.
Did you know that this last week that for the second year in a row, Educational Weekly ranked Florida as number 6 in the country?
But
for
it has
education?
been raised
It was
9th.
No. The year before that it was 11th, and the year before that it was 6th.
Yes, but
But you're
So
talking
for-
about two different things.
Yeah.
You're talking about the school system, and then what John's talking about is the workforce. He's
Yes.
65 years old,
Correct.
You're
If
not
you,
in the
I
school
apologize.
system
I
right now.
apologize.
and so something has to change, and now maybe that's perception or the grades or the school system coming up that it did not used to be, but at least now you're saying it does.
Well, and I will tell you, anyone who's taught here for the last number of years, I mean, for example, and again, anyone who's a long-term teacher in here, please chime in. When my wife started at Crystal River Middle School 20 years ago, when they asked, she said, okay, now what are the standards you want me to teach? Now she's a University of Florida. Our country's leading schools are our university system, and people, as we know, come from all over the world to come to our university system. University of Florida has some of the best teaching programs we've had for a number of years. She comes out of it, she comes to the school system in Citrus County, she says, okay, now what standards did you want me to start using? There was 3 pages, tiny little pages of those complete standards, and they said, good luck. Now we've come to the standards, it's about this thick, it's collated into multiple categories of every type, and if you don't do it, you can be legally, held accountable for not teaching those standards and not teaching them, and those standards are going to be tied to the tests The pendulum has gone so far the other way that both the art of teaching and the art of getting students to understand and learn a craft and a skill is gone. I mean, it is really, we have taken it out. Our students right now in this school, and in, I would say, nearly every high school in Florida, in public high school, its option is you better get your high school diploma, and it's going to be a college-eligible high school diploma. And today, the requirements for that are higher than the entrance to the University of Florida.
Wow.
So, where are the skilled laborers coming from? There are no skilled laborers that we're developing right now. I'm sorry, there may have been a hand or two. Yeah.
I just had a question on your end-of-course exam. So you said the student has to pass it in order to get a high school diploma. So if the student does not pass a particular end-of-course exam, then what does the school have to, what happens?
Ms. Nobles, did you want to hit that?
If they don't pass the intercourse exam, then they have to be remediated so that they can take it again and again and again
Yeah.
until they pass it.
Until they pass it.
And then if they don't, but they still have, they've taken the class requirement, they have a certificate of completion, which is not.
And here's something we talked about and touched on briefly last time, but I will tell you that that's a tool we don't have. In third grade, we've had the FCAT as a third grade test that you needed in order to get past the third grade. But we had multiple options that if they didn't pass the FCAT, teachers could use a portfolio system to show, well, see, they've done the work. They have learned that skill. We don't have that option with an EOC. Now, the only exemption, I believe, or one of the exemptions with an EOC that you don't have to pass is if you are designated as an ESE student and you have it as part of your IEP.
But you still have to take the test, and you still have to basically be remediated to see if you can before you're given an exemption.
Thomas?
Yes.
Hey, real quick, like, I've been popping in and out doing some meetings and everything. I have a much longer meeting I have to go to. Will not be here for the conclusion of this one. So I'd like to just take a quick second. That's okay.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. First of all, thank you everybody for being interested in this task force and interested in a career in technical education. And I can tell you, speaking to the leadership here in Tallahassee, the spotlight is going to be on this in both this session and the next session as a minimum. Okay, there are multiple levels of people who are actively participating in this discussion. Everybody from Enterprise Florida to the chambers, to the industries, to education, and pre-K through 12, post-secondary education. It is the spotlight as far as education. And subsequently, part of what I'm trying to do in that is I know there's a lot of top-down driven items. I'm trying to make sure that what this task force does is bring a bottom-up look at career and technical education. And I think that is paramount to what this discussion that you're currently having, as well as what's going on in the schools, because we're finding out now that young boys and girls in school are currently having this discussion as well. And I want to thank you again for being here. I apologize for the fact I have to run out, but please continue to give me the input that we need, because Citrus County, and I'm finding this out more than ever, is the shining example of what a school district should look like when it comes to career and technical education. And I'm hoping, and I'm going to be putting out the invites to those in DOE and others throughout the state, please come to Citrus County and look. We got it, we understand it, and in that, let us take lead of it. So I would like to let you know, we are doing very well for the state of Florida. It is the spotlight for career and technical education, and I'm going to push very hard on this agenda, but also start bringing in the powers that be to try to get them to see and follow our example of implementation of career and technical education.
Thank you, Representative. Does anybody have any questions for the representative before because he make it easier? No, I guess that means they agree with you, but that would be really scary. Even for me, that would be really scary that they all agree with you. Thank you, Representative.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good day.
We're going to pretty much wrap up today, but a lot of you all have asked questions, and I know that there's some new information that people are sometimes shocked to hear. I will tell you, I still have concerns about some of the studies that have come out of even their accuracy, because they do not correlate with the national studies that have also been done on Florida. And that's some of the information. I don't think you were able to be at our last meeting, were you?
No, I missed it, I'm sorry.
Dr. Stone, who's one of the foremost leaders in the country on career and technical education, really, I think, gave us some ideas that, and questions of, are we going down the right path politically in Florida that's best for career development in our labor force?
Well, what could this task force do?
Well, I'll tell you, we started by that this bill that's come out has purely come out of, for example, the conversation of even last task force's meeting. Now the question is going to be is to make sure that we are going about now putting in the study, one, getting that bill done, and two, that the study then studies the issues that we're very specifically doing. Because everything, it seems like, in education these days has been from the top down. It has been, we have been told they will go to college. We have been told they must pass Algebra 2. We've been told all of these other things, and yet the things that we're saying bubbling up that we know in our communities, these skills, these labor forces that we need, they are not allowed. They're just plain not allowed unless you first get through the hoops that are set up by the state. And part of that is then, again, giving autonomy to us locally, giving us some flexibility, and letting us design some of these academies like you see here. I will tell you, one of the things that I would love to see is, somebody here mentioned about that there wasn't a lot of males in the health academy, or that they seemed that there was a lack of them. And I've asked that question. I still think that maybe it's my perception, but I still think there are fewer males than there are females in the program. We have started a EMT, kind of a pre-EMT course here, where they can go off campus and take some of those courses. I would like to see that we get to expand some of those options so that we can bring those to the campuses, or that we offer them on the campuses. Because, for example, here, if you're a law enforcement, firefighter, if you want to become a paramedic, work in a hospital, EMTs, especially for males, are a great pathway. It's not easy. There will be some kids that maybe the pathway is they only get exposed to it in high school. There'll be others that maybe they can complete that in high school. I can tell you, Nature Coast, I met with them. They love to partner up with us with that. There are challenges. One of the first is course replacement. If they require this, how can we say, well, if you pass this section of their course, it would be equal to? Because, again, this is a real industry standard that we need that. Let's apply that and say that meets geometry or Algebra 2, or it meets the math requirements if they complete the series of those.
Is that because of funding?
Which?
In other words, couldn't Citrus County have its own criteria?
No.
And then you get a diploma?
No.
Or is it?
You have to, your diploma has to be credited by the Department of
To
Education.
get funding?
Well, you'd have to have a credited school, and in our case, a public school has to be, Florida Department of Credited. Now, here's the thing, though, and this is something I do bring up. If you are a private charter, the definition is different. For example, our Academy of Environmental Science, which is a charter school, those students are public school students. They still have to meet the same criteria. But if you are a private charter, you want to go out tomorrow and start a charter and you can get it approved. If you want to go find a different accredited organization to accredit you, you can come up with your own criteria that will accredit you. You do not have to follow Florida's educational. But here's what's frustrating to me. The same dollars that we have to use, but we have to meet that criteria, you can go and meet whatever criteria you want and get the same money.
But what's the best return on the investment?
Well, right now, by statistics, Florida's public school system outbeats Florida's private and public charter schools almost 2 to 1. Their schools fail at twice the rate of ours, and our schools percentage-wise are twice as successful as theirs. So I would argue to say that I think the best return on investment has been the public school system. And I think the data clearly shows that. Are there shining examples? And this is personal, this is Thomas's personal opinion. This is not the representatives or anyone. This is mine personal. I will tell you that I think that the challenge that we have is because there are multiple sets of rules and there is one for private and one for public. Why is it good for them and they have that autonomy and flexibility, but public schools do not? And that's in law. So, thank you everyone very much. And
Where's the next one you say?
I'm going to send it out. I'm not sure, but it'll be probably in a central location of Citrus County. And I will be. I think some of you received. I will send notes out as well as there'll be uploads to any of the stuff that we received today. I'll also put up online as well.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate you seeing